Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today I'm going to go into detail on why you should follow the Galactic Championship. So before we start, this video is sponsored by Card Market, the best marketplace to buy and sell cards in Europe. Let's first start by the basics. The Galactic Championship will take place in Las Vegas, Nevada, United States. Which is pretty awesome for people who have the finances to travel there, or for people who are local from that area. It will have a grand total from day 1 to 2,048 players. So this is the amount. This is the maximum capacity of the tournament for day 1, and it's from what I've heard, this has been completely sold out. That means that we're likely to have around that amount. So obviously, there's not always people who sign up don't always show up. There's always little inconveniences. So we don't know exactly how many people is gonna show up, but it looks like there's basically around 2,000 players who are gonna be here at least in day 1, and you can count on around 254 more players who have already have their day 1 buy, who are ready to play in day 2 as well, which do not overlap with those 2,000 players. So basically, we are looking at around 200-300 players, 2,300 players in total in the tournament, which makes it by far the biggest Star Wars Limited tournament ever organized, and by far by a long shot, because the biggest event we had so far was, I think, the regional qualifier in Lille, which had around 800 players, if I'm not mistaken. So this is more than twice that size, which is absolutely insane. It is 10 times the size of the biggest tournament we had in set 3, if you remember, in Birmingham. We won around 200 players tournament, which was the biggest tournament that we had in set 3. This is 10 times that size, which is absolutely gargantuan. Obviously, it's going to be very interesting to see how that pans out. For me, this by itself is a great advertisement for the game, because if you have a game that is healthy enough to host a tournament of that size, that means the game is healthy. It sends a great signal to other card games, and it's gonna make it so people are gonna be more interested to pick up this game, because there's massive tournaments being organized. This is to 2,300 players is honestly very, very large, even for Magic or for Yu-Gi-Oh standards. This is a really, really large tournament. So I hope this won't be the biggest tournament ever organized for Star Wars Limited, but it's possible that it might very well be the biggest ever Star Wars Limited tournament ever organized, because keep in mind that for subsequent season, those kind of tournaments will not be open tournament. They won't be tournament open to everybody. The other Galactic Championship will only be upon invitation through the tournament system. So this is something you gotta understand, that this is not necessarily gonna be like this for the next year. So this might end up being the biggest ever Star Wars Limited tournament ever organized. And it's gonna be a 3-day tournament that's gonna run between the 25th and the 27th of July. So it's gonna be day 1 on the 25th, where there's gonna be around 2,000 players battling it out. Every players who makes a 6-2 record is qualified for day 2, which means that we don't exactly know how many people will be in day 2, but there's going to be 250 players plus 250-ish players plus whoever managed to make 6-2 in day 1. So it's going to be a pretty large tournament even on day 2, I would reckon. And then finally day 3. For day 3, basically, we don't know exactly how many players will be taking part in day 3. It really is going to come down to to the amount of players who make it to day 2, I guess. But we can expect maybe something. There's going to be 3 rounds of Swiss plus the top 8 for day 3, which I'm assuming there should be at least a top 64 that was going to come into day 3. So needless to say, of course, making it to day 3 is going to be very difficult, and it's going to be an accomplishment by itself to make it to day 3. You can be sure of this. So we're just going to talk a little bit about Team Enigma. What is our plan for this tournament? What is going on the Team Enigma side of things? So we have obviously an European team. So for us, traveling to the Galactic Championship is not possible for everybody, because it's quite a trip. we have 4 players who are going, out of the 7 players in the team, there's going to be 4 of them who are going to be traveling to the Galactic Championship. We're going to have Beton, obviously. He got himself, of course, a day 2 invite and a free flight ticket, as well as a free hotel by doing top 2 at the sector qualifier of Milan. If you remember, his final of the Django Mirror versus Avastator in the final. We have a T85 challenge, who managed to win his day 2 by, I think he won 4 PQs in total in the Germany. He's absolutely terrorizing the German meta, and he also won a separate German tournament to also give him a free flight ticket. So he doesn't have free flight ticket, free hotel, but he has free flight, and he got himself, I think, 4 times his qualification to day 2. So he's extremely overqualified for day 2. He's absolutely terrorized the set 2. So he also terrorized the German meta. Then we also have, of course, SIP. SIP, interestingly enough, does not have a free flight or free ticket. He despite his top 8 performance in the sector qualifier in Liverpool, and he also did some great performances in other tournaments, and his many PQ wins. I think he has 3 or 4 PQ wins as well, so he will obviously be automatically qualified to day 2, and obviously very looking forward to take part in the event. And then finally you get I Am So Humble. I Am So Humble, thanks to his top 4 performance at the regional qualifiers. So that was the regional qualifier of Lille. Managed to earn himself a free flight, free hotel, and obviously a day 2 invite. But I think he already had that through the couple of PQs that he won. I think he won 1 PQ or 2 PQs, I believe. So yeah, so we have 4 players who are going to be obviously in day 2, and they're going to be trying to battle it out. So we've been training very hard throughout the season and throughout the last few weeks to try to prepare the best deck possible for the event. So obviously I'm not going to reveal to you what this deck is. I'm not even going to tell you if it's a new deck, or I just don't want to give any hint. We obviously want to maximize our chance to winning the tournaments. I just want to tell you that we've been training very hard, and we also did invite Yosera to our playtest session. So Yosera has been taking part in the last 3 of our training sessions, which are and he's obviously in our view one of the best player, undeniably the best player in the UK, arguably one of the best player in Europe. So we were very delighted to have him in our trainings, and the entire team has been training very hard, even the one who are not going to the Galactic Championship. So myself, Dylan, and Al have been really working hard to prepare the rest of the teammates in order to get ourselves the best deck and the best chance possible. So thank you we are thanking the rest of the team, but we're also thanking Yosera for helping us training for this tournament, so we can do the best result possible. And I hope that Yosera also benefited a lot from those training sessions, which I'm sure he will, which I'm sure he did. He will also be taking part, of course, of the Galactic Championship. That's obviously obvious. So what about me? So people might be wondering if I'm going to the Galactic Championship or not. So I have both a free flight ticket that I've earned at Birmingham by winning the Birmingham tournament. I got myself a free flight ticket to Vegas, and I earned my day 2 by winning the PQ Belfast. Unfortunately for me, or fortunately, I don't know how you want to say it, I will not be taking part in the Galactic Championship because my baby is due for around this week. Actually, my baby was supposed to be born a couple of days ago, but obviously it's the first one that we're having, so it can take a little bit longer. So we're still waiting for the baby to come out this week. So obviously it is way too close to the Galactic Championship for me to be taking part. I'm way too I need to be, of course, 100% available for my wife, for her to be able to make sure everything is completely okay. So yeah, I will obviously not be taking part in the Galactic Championship as I have far more important things to do. But obviously, it doesn't mean that I won't have any impact on the events. I've obviously be training very, very hard with the rest of Team Enigma in order to make them, to prepare them as much as possible. I'm currently in paternity leave, which means that and my baby is not born yet, which means that I'm completely 100% working with the rest of the team to train them as hard as possible to make them to be able to for them to make the best performances. So even though I'm not taking part of the event, I'm hoping that I'm gonna have some sort of impact through my teammates, which I hope will do super well. Moving on back to the sorry, the slide I was being. So the biggest question that obviously we want to answer with this event is what is going to be the meta coming out of the Galactic Championship. Though obviously the Galactic Championship is going to be played by the best player in the entire world. So you can assume that what meta is going to come out of the Galactic Championship is going to be very representative of what meta we're going to have for the rest of the season. I really strongly doubt that we are going to see a meta from the Galactic Championship and then this meta will be broken out shortly after. There's a chance this happens, but I think it's very unlikely to happen. So whatever comes out of the Galactic Championship is likely to be what's going to end up being the meta for the rest of the season, unless of course some ban or some suspension are being applied by Fantasy Flight Game in order to change that. So what is the meta that I'm really expecting? I've made an entire video where I go into details about what I think the meta is going to be. I also shown a lot of different deck lists on my channel, and I think that there's a large proportion of those deck lists which are likely to be meta. But let me reiterate one more time on what is the meta and maybe try to explain it in a different way. So obviously this is a simplification. There's way more decks than this, but basically I've identified 3 large categories of decks that we're going to see at the Galactic Championship. The first category is the most obvious one, are going to be the Force deck. Obviously set 5 has given us a lot of very, very powerful Force enablers, Force units, as well as the very powerful Force mechanic. I think FFG did an amazing job with the Force mechanic. They've given us really strong ways to enable the Force, but also very strong payoffs. And there's a wide variety of different ways to play Force. I'm only showing you here what I believe are going to be the 3 most popular, but there's of course, you can play this with Anakin, you can play this with Avar, you can play this with the new Obi-Wan, you can play this with a number of other leaders, but in my opinion, the 3 most populars are going to be Han Solo 2, Quinlan. Quinlan will not be using the Force base. I believe he will be relying on Tarkin Town, but it's still going to be a 4th throw deck, and the Talzin decks, whether it's the yellow or the red version, using 4th throws. Those are kind of like, I categorize those decks are the 4th throw deck. The decks are going to be using 4th throws and trying to enable this insanely powerful card that is 4th throw, as well as all the other Force enablers. So those decks, most of the decks will be, how we can see Han Blue. I think Han Blue and Han Green are going to be the most popular versions. Quinlan Tarkin Town is going to be the most popular version for the Quinlan, and then Mother Talzin either yellow or red. And then there can be other decks as well. There also might be a chance that we might see some other. There's also Rey, of course. We also might see some Force decks that don't run 4th throw. I think in the non-red color combination of 4th throw that is going to be the most popular is probably going to be blue-green. So there's a number of blue-green Force deck that can be very powerful. So that's another thing that we're gonna have to be mindful about. This is kind of like the big first categories of deck are the 4th throw decks. I think are gonna be the main driving force of the meta that you're gonna have to prepare against, specifically the Han 2 decks. My number 2 big category of deck that I think will be very heavily represented in the meta, maybe to a lesser extent, are going to be the Vader decks. So specifically the Vader green, so the blue, black, green decks that features Darth Vader to some degree. So on this deck, there's 3 popular decks that I think are quite powerful with those. There's obviously the Kira decks, with either going to be playing ECL or Data Vault. The Guard Saxons deck, most likely with ECL, but also I've seen some people playing Data Vault as well, and also Kylo Ren with either ECL or Data Vault. And here the big decision for those decks is whether they want to play Data Vault and rely on timely interventions to have the timely intervention Darth Vader combo, or are they going to be relying on ECL to get themselves a Vader on curve. I think Vader ECL, Vader Ambush is one of the most powerful combo in the game. It's one of the strongest thing that this set has brought up to this new meta. So this is something that we're gonna have to, that people are gonna be mindful about. I think the reason why I make this combo particularly powerful is because this combo is extremely powerful against mid-range. And mid-range decks are gonna be an extremely powerful force to be reckoned with in this meta. So obviously that is a strong indicator that this is a very good place to be, to have the Vader decks. So which Vader decks is going to prevail remains to be seen, but those decks I think have a strong options on this meta because Vader ECL is just that powerful against mid-range. And I think this is like a big section. It's going to be a big section of the meta that's going to be represented by those type of decks. And then finally, the old, what I like to call the old decks, the decks that maybe aren't so, didn't really get that much from the new set, but are very powerful because they were very powerful before, and they're particularly well positioned in this new meta. I'm thinking about Vader, which I think, Vader Yellow, but also I could talk about any aggressive decks that runs into space. We also that could be really powerful in this meta because most people, it's a very ground based meta. For example, force units are almost exclusively on the ground. Actually they all are on the ground, so in order to be playing a force deck you're going to be playing almost exclusively on the ground. Same for the Vader ECL combo. It's a combo that doesn't do much against an all space deck because in order to ambush into something there needs to be at least one ground unit to ambush into. So so those two giant categories of deck basically largely ignore the ground. At least the most powerful things are mostly happening on the ground, which means that dodging the ground arena is going to be a very effective strategy in this event. So Vader is going to be a force to be reckoned with. Then the second deck is Sabine. I think Sabine is still a very powerful deck. As being an aggro deck with a lot of cheap card, it's a deck that doesn't care too much about 4-throw. Most of the time, or if you have to use 4-throw, you have to 4-throw yourself and then do 2-for-1 yourself, which can be really problematic sometimes. It's a really powerful deck, it always been, and I think it is strong in this meta as it was in the previous meta as well. Another deck that I've taken as an example here is Cad Bane Tarkintown. Cad Bane is known to be a deck that is very powerful against mid-range decks. Very powerful against mid-range decks. His main weakness is going to be the control decks, but there's almost no control decks in this meta. The only control decks you might see are going to be maybe some Kira decks, some Kira control decks, but maybe some Kylo Ren control decks, but it's mostly a mid-range meta, which makes Cad Bane a very effective, it's also a deck that has gotten a lot of very significant weapons. So it's really just a deck that got a lot of things going for it in this current meta that I think can be quite strong as well. So obviously I'm talking about all those different options, but there are way other options. We haven't talked about Palpatine as well. Palpatine could surprise the meta in some ways. We also talked about, there's also the Chancellor Palpatine, which has gotten so much stronger. I also talked about the Boba Data Vault. I also would like to talk about Piet. Piet Red is very powerful in a mid-range meta. So there's a wide variety of different decks you can play in this meta. It's not even though a lot of people are complaining about the prevalence of 4-throw in this metagame, I believe there are a lot of options. So what are the decks that I think will not see play in the Galactic Championship? So for me, there's two categories of decks which I think are unlikely to see a lot of play in this event. The first one are going to be the Han 1 decks. Han 1 is going to be difficult to play in this meta because it's a deck that, more than any other deck in the meta, suffers so much against 4-throw. It's very difficult whenever you're playing Han 1 to play around 4-throw. It's such a backbreaking play. whenever you get 4th throw, whether it's on yourself or the opponent 4th throw himself to kill your large threats. I believe hand 1, generally speaking, is by far the deck that will suffer the most in this meta. It's still, of course, an incredibly powerful leader, so I'm expecting it will see some amount of plays. But to me, it is definitely the leader that I think is going to be suffering the most from this 4th throw meta. The second categories of decks that I think will struggle in this meta will be the control decks. And the reason for it, so you would think that, oh, it's going to be a very mid-range heavy meta, therefore control is going to be hard control is going to be very strong. The problem is, like, hard control has not really gotten anything from this new set in terms of new cards. Even in the last set, the only real card that hard control got was the no glory only result, and I think this is not a lot of help that it got in set 4, and now in set 5 it has gotten absolutely nothing. There's nothing new that makes hard control a stronger archetype overall. So for example, the Bosk Red did not get anything new, and the Throne yellow deck got in the Legacy run, which is a very significant upgrade, but it was not really that powerful of a deck to begin with. So it's kind of now basically Bosk Red is more evened out with Throne yellow in terms of which one of the two decks is the best as far as a hard control archetype. But it doesn't change the fact that the overall power level of hard control decks has not gotten up. However, there's been so many amazing anti-control tool. We're talking about Keller and Beck in green, the 7/7 that can bring something out, such a powerful unit against control, insanely powerful against power dark side. And on the side of red-white, we also got some really powerful tool, like obviously, for example, the new Kiadi Mundi, also the Jedi in hiding that discard a card when it dies. All those type of cards are incredibly effective against control. So I believe that most decks will be very well prepared against hard control, even without the need to change anything about their deck list, which I think is a really bad sign for hard control. So in my opinion, hard control is going to be very difficult to play in this meta. So now the question, of course, is which of those 3 categories of deck will prevail. I think it's a very diverse meta. There's once again a lot of people complaining about 4th throw being a frustrating card to play against and don't like the meta for that reason, and I can understand that, but from a diversity sake, I think this is a pretty diverse meta. I don't know if it's going to be as diverse as set 4, but it's definitely going to be very diverse. It's just a lot of different decks you can play in this meta that I think are very powerful. So we'll see how that goes, and it's also a very fair meta in a sense that there's no extreme deck. I think extreme aggro or extreme control are not very good. It's really kind of a very mid-rangey meta, which I think a lot of people are going to appreciate as well. So I think it's a great meta. Now the question is, who will prevail? Who will come out on top out of the 3 categories of deck? And I'm saying this in all honesty, I have no idea which of those categories of decks are going to come out on top. Other things to be excited about for the Galactic Championship. The first thing is that FFG is likely to announce some very big news regarding Star Wars Unlimited. Usually those big events are a great occasion for them to make big announcements, so that's going to be super exciting to follow that and see what things on store. Basically what I'm expecting is some news regarding the next set, which is, as you know, is going to be called the Secret of Power. So we are expecting to get some news about this. We are also expecting to get news about the next season tournament system. We know that there's going to be a lot of changes done to the tournament system for Star Wars Unlimited for the next season, which is going to be called the Season 1. So that's going to be very interesting to know which changes they're going to make to the tournament system in order to improve it. So that's also another very big thing. They might also announce a new type of product. Like, we don't know. There's a lot of things that they could announce, but for me, the top 2 big things that they will announce would be more info about Secret of Power and more info about the Season 1 tournament system. The other things to be super excited about is, like, even though EU players will be vastly outnumbered, for the very first time, the best players of both continents will compete against one another. Unfortunately, the community, the Star Wars community in South America and in Asia is still extremely small. I mean, especially in Asia. Like in South America, there is a sizable community, but There hasn't been any major tournament coming on in those events, which means that those people did not get a free flight ticket. So I'm assuming, I could be wrong about this, but I'm assuming there's very few South American players are gonna go into the Galactic Championship. But at the very least, the first major continent of Star Wars Limited, which are obviously North America and Europe, are gonna be competing against one another for the very first time, because basically so far the only real way that those two continents could really play against one another was through like some competitive events online. There's been a few Americans traveling over to the European tournament, but it's such a small sample size that it's not really representative, as there's probably also some EU players who did travel to the US and vice versa, but this is really not super representative. What I'm really excited about here is really kind of to see which one of the best players in EU versus the best players in US, which one are going to prevail. Obviously, this has to be taken to a grain of salt. You cannot draw any conclusion about who is the best player just for one tournament only. So something I want to say, that regardless on whoever comes out on top, you cannot draw any conclusion just from one, because something that happens as well is that teams will make a meta call, and usually all persons of the team will end up playing the same deck. And what happens then is, like, if the meta call is correct, then you end up the team doing very well. But if the meta call is not correct, you can have the entire team falling apart. So this is something that, and it doesn't mean that they were bad players, it just means that they made the wrong call. And obviously when you get into like a very blank meta, when you don't know what's gonna come be, there's a part of randomness into that. Like, you don't maybe like you don't know what's gonna come out whenever you're trying to make a call like this. There's a part of obviously your ability to predict the meta, which is a skill in the game, but there's also a part of luck as well, and also pairings and all this. So it's honestly, you cannot draw conclusion. Of course, there's a luck of the draw during the game when two players play against one another. Star Wars Limited and our equal skill level, the difference maker is going to be luck in a lot of cases. So obviously, so what I'm saying is, like, it's going to be super fun to see, and to see those two continents clashing, even though once again the Americans are vastly outnumbering the EU. So obviously that's also another thing to take into account, that not for example in Team Enigma, I can guarantee you that our chance of being able to do a big result in the event would be far higher if all 7 of us were taking part rather than just 4 of us. So there's also like that things that has to be taken into account. But needless to say, once again, what I want to say is, like, you cannot draw any conclusion about which region is better just by looking at the results of the Galactic Championship. However, it's going to be super fun to watch, and it's going to be super interesting to see those two great teams, those great players and those great continents clashing against one another. It's kind of what I want to say. So also just want to let you know that you can pick up Adigalia on Card Market for only €3.29. A card that will see a heavy amount of play in the upcoming Galactic Championship for a very reasonable price. So moving on to now, obviously one of the big questions that the Galactic Championship is going to answer is whether or not Thorrk should be banned or not. So obviously Thorrk is not going to be banned before the event starts. It would be horrible for the game if they would just ban this just last minute, just a couple of days before the event. And they already told us in the past that they would never do something like this. So that's quite safe. And I also don't think Thorrk announcement, they're going to do any announcement about Thorrk on the day of the event. They're going to let the event play out, and they will make a decision on whether Thorrk should be banned probably a couple of weeks after the event, basically between the Galactic Championship and the start of the PQ season, which will start around September. So this is something that is going to be, of course, a very important question. Obviously, there's one card that deserves a ban in the current iteration of the game. It is obviously Thorrk. I will make a more in-depth video about whether Thorrk should be banned after we get data from the Galactic Championship. The only thing I want to say for now is that Thorrk, I think, doesn't deserve to be banned now. And the reason is because even though, yes, it's a very powerful card, and yes, it's a staple card that's going to see heavy amount of play and it's going to have a huge impact on the meta, that's not by itself a good enough reason to ban a card. We've seen many cards in the past which are absolutely auto-include in the respective archetype and had an immense impact on the meta. We're talking about cards like Overwhelming Barrage, Power of Darkseid, Luke Skywalker. That kind of cards are all in their own respective archetypes, absolute auto-include, and they have an amazing impact. They have an insane impact on the meta, and they've been meta from the very beginning of the game. Thorrk, for the very first time, is going to have a huge impact on the meta because we've reached that critical mass of 4th unit, which means that there's now a wider amount of deck that can play it. My take about Thorrk is something that I've said in the past, is that even though Thorrk is going to be a lot more playable in a wide variety of different decks, and it's definitely going to be easier to play, I don't think the power ceiling of the card is really getting through the roof. I think it's going to be easier to play, but it's not necessarily going to be more powerful in terms of raw power compared to what it was in set 4 when you were playing it in Quinlan, for example. However, there are other arguments and other reasons you might want to ban a card, and we've already seen this in the past, for example, with DJ. In terms of pure power level, I don't think DJ deserved to be banned. However, it was a card that was extremely frustrating to play against, that really created this negative player experience where you would be denied resources, you'd be stealing resources of your opponent. You could make the exact same argument about Thorrk, where I think Thorrk is usually fine to play around, but when your opponent plays multiple Thorrk in a row, it can really be very frustrating to be playing against multiple Thorrk in a row. And this is something that I think should be considered, of course, is the fun of the game, is whether it is a fun card to play against, and it is definitely not always a fun card to play against, especially when you manage to pull multiple Thorrks in a row. So this fun argument, in my opinion, is a far better argument to be made if you want to advocate for a ban of Thorrk, is the fact that it creates this negative player experience. With that being said, that even though yes, Thorrk is going to be a card that's going to see a heavy amount of play in Galactic Championship, there's however a wide variety of different Thorrk decks that you can play. There's just so many different Thorrk decks now, whether it's obviously Quinlan, whether it is obviously Talzin red, Hantu green, Hantu blue, which are two very different decks, all the Obi-Wan 5 decks. There's just so many different Thorrk decks that there's also a lot of variety within the Thorrk. So let's say even if the Thorrk decks represent 50% of the meta, which is likely to be the case, is that really that big of an issue? Because once again, there's a wide variety of different Thorrk decks. So is it really that big of an issue? It's not like you got 50% of the meta is like a Boba deck like it was in set 2, because that's the leader we're talking about. Here we're only talking about the card in a 60 card deck. So is that really a big of an issue if there's 50% of Thorrk decks in the meta? I would have, if the 50% of those decks are a wide variety of different decks, I don't necessarily think that's an issue. Also, something to keep in mind is that we're basically probably witnessing the peak of Force Raw power level, because next set we're gonna have new cards be included. Most of them are not gonna be Force. It might not be like a Force focused set as like this one is, which also means that by default, new archetypes are going to emerge, and those archetypes might not be playing the Force. So there's also something like, we are obviously at the middle of the biggest focus of Thorrk decks, and then the set after, Thorrk will rotate out. So is that really going to be an issue for such a long time? Not necessarily. So that's another thing that has to be taken into account, is the future of the game as well. So we'll see exactly how it goes. Once again, this tournament is going to be very interesting to follow and see if Thorrk will end up being banned or not. So basically there's two main theories, is that Thorrk is a staple card on the same level as Overwhelming Barrage, Luke Skywalker. The other side of the slider is that Thorrk is a complete format defining card that completely wraps the meta. Those are the two things. So this tournament will tell us which one of those two things is it. Are we in just a very strong staple situation, or are we in a completely format defining situation? So I don't have the definitive answer to that question, because we are definitely lacking datas. Right now, there hasn't been any large Legion of the Force tournaments being organized so far, so we don't have any data to back up one or the other. However, once again, regardless on whether we think this card is too strong, there's always the argument of, is it just making the game not fun? And that is ultimately subjective. So you can give your opinion about this in the comments below. So I just wanted to say that I wish everybody who's going to attend the tournament to have success. I wish you that you're going to do well, and I hope that you're going to have, but more importantly, I hope you're going to have fun, and I hope it's going to be a very memorable experience. I really, really wish I could be with you guys, but I got more important things to do, unfortunately. I hope that next year I will be able to attend, and I wish everybody all the success and all the fun that you can possibly have in this event, despite Thorrk. And thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.